Hey guys, Victor here, coming at you with another video, and today we're finally going to be doing another updated test hand video featuring the Dark World deck. Now, while the deck hasn't really changed all that much, it's still important to revisit these every single time just because you never really want to become rusty with the deck, right? Just because it is very easy to misplay, and even compared to the last time, right? There are going to be probably a whole bunch of new viewers that are still curious about how to play Dark World, so it just seemed fitting to just make an update, especially because the deck has gone through a couple of changes with the addition of a Baoku and the Forbidden Unlimited list, giving us access to a couple more dangers in the form of Jackalope and Tsuchinoko. So, with that in mind, let's jump straight into it. Now, as is always the case with these videos, we're going to give the deck a nice shuffle to ensure the authenticity, just because we want to make sure that our hands are as realistic as possible, because while I could just give myself the 5 perfect cards to showcase you the max potential that the Dark World deck has, you don't really gain much valuable information out of that, right? All you really know is that if your hand is broken, your deck is broken, which, I mean, that can pretty much apply to whatever. So I'd rather just do this and then give you the most authentic hand possible so that we can ensure that even if it's the most suboptimal hand, you can at least try and play through it. You know, you got to play to your outs, got to use your card or use all your cards as much as possible to ensure that you can try and dig yourself out of any hole that you might find yourself in. Which is a little bit difficult because this deck does not have any flow charts or whatever. It's very much a play as you go type of deck, and I know that can be overwhelming to a lot of people, especially when they're new to the game. So yeah, it's just better to do that for these types of decks. So that we can just give it one final cut, and then we can give our 5 starting cards, being the 1 Danger Jackalope, Rainbow over King of Dark World, again the Diamond Tiger, Upstart Goblin, and Triple Tactics Talent. Alright, so right off the bat, this hand, it's pretty solid. I'm not going to lie to you. We already have the Gen and Ken combo, so we can just normal summon that, and then we'll be able to either bait our opponent's hand traps or just essentially just win the game right then and there, right? But I think what we're gonna do, yeah, I think we're probably just going to start with the Gen and Ken and then force our opponent to either answer it or just lose the game. So we're going to go Gen, and then we're going to give our opponents Ken. And then, as I stated in the deck profile that I did just the other day, it is pretty important when you're giving them a monster to put them right under the extra monster zones. Not because we play Relinquished Anima, but because we do play cards like a Caution Magician, which bounce whatever monsters are in the extra monster zone. So, you just got to be a little bit cautious of that. And from here, Ken's effect will activate to allow us to draw 2 cards and then discard a card. So we're going to draw 1, we're going to draw 2, and both are really good cards, Alert and Dark Corridor. And then we can discard the Rainbow over King of Dark World. And from here, because it was discarded by an opponent's monster's effect technically, we will be able to activate both of Rainbow's effects. So we're going to be able to add a level 5 or higher Dark World monster from our deck to our hand, being either Silva or the original Grapha. And we can also special summon a level 4 or lower Dark World monster from our deck or graveyard to either side of the field. So we can just straight up just give them the Ceruli so that we can start turning on the Silva hand loop plays. Or we could also just go for the Genta line, or not the Genta line, but start just establishing monsters on the field is what I'm trying to get across. But because we are adding the level 5 Silva off of this more than likely, it's probably just all right to just go straight for the Ceruli, and just like that, the game is basically over at this point, right? So we're going to add Silva to our hand, and then we're going to give Ceruli to our opponent, and then Ceruli's effect will activate because it just needs to be special summoned by a Dark World monster, not by its own effect, or it needs to be special summoned by a Dark World effect. So even if you summon it out with Rainbow, you still trigger it, and then Ceruli's effect will activate, and then you get to discard another card, and you're going to discard the Silva, and then the Silva's effect will come back, and then on summon, you'll be able to shuffle back 2 cards from your opponent's hand. Now they get to choose which ones they want to put at the bottom of their deck, but it really doesn't matter. Like I said, the game is quite literally over at this point, no matter what they have, especially because we've already hard drawn the talents. So from this point on, we can basically just start flexing on our opponent, as we're going to rip a talent, we're going to activate the talents, we're going to rip a card out of our opponent's hand, put them down to 2, and it's typically going to be like the most impactful card. So if they, for some whatever reason, saved a hand trap, particularly like Nibiru, the Primal Being, right? This is only 4 summons, so being able to take away a Nibiru or just like a key combo starter, preferably like a hand trap though, because those are the ones that stop us, right? It's just an auto win in most situations. Now, ideally, this would be happening like later on in the game, but it's perfectly fine that it happened right now, right? There's no reason why we shouldn't be happy about it. But yeah, it's perfectly fine. So we activate the talent, we rip a card away, and now our opponent is down to 2 cards left in their hand, and we've basically just committed barely anything to our board. So from here, we have a couple of choices. Like we could go Rainbow Effect, bounce back to Silva, and then just like start filling up our hand. But I think what I want to do is we're going to go for the Dark Corridor, and we're going to add a Genta to our hand. And then from here, we have to discard a card, right? And what we're going to be discarding is actually going to be our Danger Jackalope, just so that we can get the graveyard effect to be able to special summon from the deck. As the hand effect to special summon itself honestly doesn't really matter anymore, just because we already have everything that we may need. So we're going to discard the Danger Jackalope and then Danger Jackalope's effect, which is to special summon from the deck in defense position. Got to make sure that it's in defense position, just because it does come up somewhat. And we're probably just going to start getting... So we could go for Danger Nessie, just if we want like link fodder. But I think the safer play would honestly just be to get Danger Mothman instead, just because it is a level 4 monster. So that means we can make like Garrus or Baguska if for some reason we didn't open like the talents or whatever, right? So we're going to summon the Danger Mothman here. And then it's pretty important for cards like these not to put them in the extra monster zone, just because, or I mean, your link zones do matter to like some extent. So if you're not planning on like bouncing it back with your Akashic Magician, then you basically just want to avoid putting them here, right? So I guess we could put that here because Danger Mothman is a pretty solid card to bounce back, but it's not really all that's like, it's not all that, right? But yeah, okay, so we've done that. We've resolved our Dark Corridor. We've gotten rid of the Danger Jackalope. We've summoned the Mothman. And then from here, we're actually just going to activate our Genta. And we're going to be adding our Gates of the Dark World just to be able to thin out our deck and then continue to go through our engine. Now you may be wondering, what's the point? We don't have any like Darkhold or Fiends to discard or whatever to draw more. And that's where you're wrong, because we do have the Rainbow in the graveyard. And the Rainbow will in turn be able to bounce back the Silva to our hand, and then we can special summon it to any zone that we want. This one is probably pretty important to just put it here, like under the Akashic zone, right? Just so that you can, you can bounce it back, because we do want to search out Grapha at some point. So having this back in our hand is pretty invaluable. But from here, we could go straight for the Akashic play. We could also just go for like a Gates play, but I kind of want to save this just so that we can have a little bit more value after we bounce this back to our hand. And then this is also pretty important. So, because what we're probably going to end up doing, honestly, with Gates is that once we bounce the Ceruli back to our hand, this is going to be our main discard. And then from there, we're going to be able to get rid of Silva and then just be able to get rid of the last 2 cards in our opponent's hand and just make them start on 0 cards. So what we're going to do instead is we're actually just going to upstart Goblin here to see what we can get, just in case we want to like try and normal summon something else, or not normal summon because we use that again, but just have like another extender or something. So we upstart for Dangerous Tsuchinoko. Not a bad card at all, very much appreciated, but we're probably going to hold off on this just because we want to use it when there's like more cards in our hand, so that we don't like discard something good or just discard itself, even though it is a free body every single time. So from here, I think we're just going to go straight for the Akashic. So we're going to link off the Mothman and the Gen, and then we're going to summon the Akashic Magician, and then it's going to be here because we want the Ceruli back, right? So we're going to bounce back the Ceruli, and we're going to bounce back the Rainbow. And just like that, we have a full hand again, and we're about to loop our opponent for the last 2 cards that they have. So we're going to activate the Gates of Dark World, and then we're going to activate the Gates effect, banishing the Genta. And then we're going to discard the Ceruli, right? So we're going to draw another card, and it's another Genta, so fantastic. We have access to another Gates if we want to at some point in the game. But from here, we're going to activate Cerulean Effect again. Now, because we've already used the Akashic Magician, the zone that we summon it to genuinely doesn't really matter anymore. But, just to be safe, we're just going to put it back here. As these are typically like the most used zones, right? If your opponent's playing like a Link deck where they have to use like the cards directly under it. So just clogging up their zones can somewhat matter at some point. And then with Cerulean being special summon, we get to discard Silva again, and then Silva will come back, and then loop 2 more cards. And then from here, because we've used the Akashic, I don't believe the zones matter all that much anymore, unless we plan on summoning Security Dragon at some point, which probably will happen. But yeah, with the Silva coming out, our opponent is now down to 0 cards, which means that our next objective is to blow up these 2 cards at some point, as we pretty much want our opponent to start with nothing, right? So that's basically where our attention is going to divert, trying to get to these 2 cards into the graveyard, and then we're just going to try and dig through our deck as much as possible to help us ensure that we can just secure the game win right then and there. So the best way to do that is probably through activating our Genta again, and then Genta's effect will add the Gates of Dark World, and from here we can finally get access to our original Grapha. As what we're going to do is we're going to place the second gates over the original gates, and then we're going to activate it again, and we're going to banish, so Genta's the only one that we have, right? I forgot to bring this one back, so pretty important that we actually have a second one. It's pretty difficult to record these, so that's sorry about the misplays, but it's all good because it works out in the end since we drew the second Genta. So we're going to banish the Genta, discard the rainbow, draw 1, and then finally chain link. Or no, I will, yeah, okay, so yeah, Rainbow effect Chainlink 1 to search, and then Genta effect Chainlink 2. So it is pretty important for when you're starting your plays, right, to make sure that your search effects are Chainlink 1 and Genta is always chain blocking them, just because you never know if your opponent's going to like Ash Blossom you at some point, because not everyone will always Ash the field spell, right? They'll typically try and save it for like one of the more high impact cards like Dugaris or Saryuja if you play it, or a card that would be used to search out something specific, such as like Snow, right? Like they'll wait for Snow because it's guaranteed to add pretty much any Dark World card or Dark Corridor or whatever. So, just be aware, like in the early game, to try and chain block as much as possible, because it does end up mattering pretty frequently. So yeah, Chainlink 2 Genta will summon itself first, and then we'll resolve the rainbow, and then we can finally add the Grapha to our hand. And from here, we're pretty much set up pretty well for the most part. We have 2 Dangerous Uchinokos with an Allure, so we're probably going to fire that off at some point. And by some point, I mean now. So we're going to activate our Allure, draw 1, Danger Nessie, draw 2, Upstart Goblin. And we just don't really want multiple dangers, just because it means that they're going to be hit more often than not, and we'd much rather avoid that. And then we're just going to fire off this Upstart Goblin so that we can draw another card, and it's another Genta. And with that, we can finally have access to our 3rd Gates of the Dark World. So, the engine's zooming, it's doing what it's supposed to do. Our opponent's already cowering in fear, and they're just wasting time because they should have scooped 20 minutes ago. But, Yu-Gi-Oh! Players, for some reason, just do not know how to scoop. They'd much rather just run the clock and wait for you to finish for whatever reason, even if it's not advantageous to them. But, hey, you gotta do what you gotta do, I guess. So, we're still trying to figure out how best to get rid of our cards, or get rid of our opponent's cards that we gave them. And like I said, first, Grapha, obviously, like probably one of the better ones. So I guess we're just gonna go for the 3rd Gates, and then we're gonna finally get the Grapha in the graveyard. And as for what we banish, I don't believe it matters too much. But obviously, because the hand is a little bit wonky right now, we only have 2 targets, right, being the Genta and the Rainbow. And we want to save the Genta just so that you can summon itself back. So we're just going to get rid of the 3rd Genta, and then it's perfectly fine, right? As long as we have 1 at some point, like, we can continue to play during our opponent's turn. So we're going to do this. We're going to draw another card. It's another Silva, and then Grapha will pop. It doesn't matter. So we'll just pop the Ken the Diamond, or the Warrior Dragon. And from here, so we have a couple of Danger Monsters, a Silva, and we have some Dark World monsters in our graveyard, being the Grapha and the Rainbow. So what we're going to try to do, right, is we're going to bounce these guys back to our hand first, just so that we have more fodder for our Danger Monsters, so that they're less likely to hit themselves, even though the Tsuchinoko is guaranteed to, actually do something. But, you never know. You'd much rather just like increase your odds and like hit something that might matter. So we're gonna bounce that one back, and then we're gonna bounce this one back, and summon the rainbow here. I guess technically, if you really wanted to, you could conserve like the Genta, right? Just for like a potential rank 4 play. And what we could do is go bounce Selva back with Rainbow, and then bounce Rainbow back with Grapha. And then by also doing this, let's be real, these two cards are way better to have in hand than is Silva and a Genta. But, you know, sometimes you just don't really care, or you just don't see the line, and that's perfectly fine. You know, like I said, this is a fairly hard deck to play, but it's all good. And then from here, I think what we want to do is try and go for a Star Usual line just so that we can draw more and possibly extend more. So we could go with the Danger Tsuchinoko because it's guaranteed to summon, but I think we want to go with the Danger Nessie first, just because it is a little bit more, we're not guaranteed to get value out of this, especially because the only danger monster that we have left in the deck, I believe, would be a second Jackalope. So that's perfectly fine. I wish I had a die for this, but we're just going to shuffle the hand, and then we're going to pick whichever one is the most far right on the hand. So whichever one is closest to the deck. And then we're going to do this, do that. Hopefully that's good enough, and hopefully it's not Danger Nessie. All right, so this one, Selva, cool, discard, special summon, Danger Nessie, draw a card, and then Selva's effect will activate. We drew another Grapha, so that's great for later, because if we get access to Snow or just the Dark World Accession, we're going to be able to fusion summon for Grapha. And now, because we're greedy, we're going to link Grapha, Silva, well, I don't know about these two, but for sure these three. And then, yeah, probably the Silva, just because we still want to have the potential for a rank 4 play. And not everyone plays Dugera. Sometimes you'll see people playing like Abyss Dweller, which is pretty popular in the current format because it does shut down the Fiendsmith engine pretty hard. But yeah, so we're going to go for Saryuja. Even if it does seem a little bit greedy, that's fine, right? This is a greedy deck. You pretty much want to go all in all the time. So we're going to draw 4, and then we're going to put 3 cards back. So we draw Allure, Card Destruction, Jackalope, and Snow. All right, so this is pretty good. I'm not gonna lie to you. But the best way to approach this, we don't really need the Allure of Darkness anymore, just because, like I said, our goal is basically just to get rid of the Ceruli now. We don't really care about the Jackalope either, especially because we've already used the Graveyard effect. And then from there, I think the only other viable target would probably be the Danger Tsuchinoko, just because we drew the God card, so we're about to just pop off, and our opponent's going to like cower in fear because our pluses are going to be mad crazy. So yeah, I think these three perfectly fine to put at the bottom. And then from here, we could use the Saryuji effect to special summon like a Snow and then like bounce more cards so we can get more value, but this video is already pretty long, so we're just going to forget about that. So we're just going to go for the card destruction play. We're going to discard 4, draw 4. We draw Call by the Grave, again the Diamond Tiger, Snow on Light of Dark World, and another Snow on Light of Dark World. And then we're going to get our big chain links. So Grapha's effect obviously will pop the Ceruli. Then we're going to have a Snow Search, and we're going to have the Selva be special summoned. I don't believe, or I do believe that we've gone through all the level 5 or higher. So let's see, 2 Selvas, 2 Graphas. Yeah, so this won't be able to activate, but that's perfectly fine. It's just the value that we generate off of these is pretty much just going to be unmatched. So we're going to do this. So Selva is going to summon itself out. Like I said, the zone genuinely does not matter. The Snow is going to be able to search out our Dark World Accession finally. So we're going to be able to, you know, fusion summon for our Grapha. And then the Grapha will, like I said earlier, pop the Ceruli. And just like that, we've cleared our opponent's board. So now they can't even summon like a Typhon against us. And if they do, they're going to have to commit their own normal summon, which, when seeing as how they have the 0 cards in their hand, is going to be a little bit difficult. But it's all good. Now, from here, we have double Snow in our hand, again, which doesn't matter. A Call by the Grave, which is fantastic. But ideally, you would have opened this like to begin with so that you wouldn't like auto lose to a hand trap sometimes. But from here, I think we're just going to get more value out of our cards, right? So we're going to bounce the Silva with the Rainbow, and then we're going to bounce the Rainbow with the Grapha. Oh, there it is. I was looking for it. And we're going to special summon that here. And we could just like go straight up, just go for like the Accession, right? But yeah, I think it's fine. So, because you pretty much want to like establish the Grapha Fusion at some point anyways, just to make sure that your opponent can't do anything regardless. And we're probably just going to get rid of the Silva. You have to banish the Grapha, unfortunately. That's why we play a second copy, since Dark World Accession banishes Grapha when you use it from the field or the grave. If it's from hand, it goes to grave and it gets to pop a card, but we are not awarded that luxury, unfortunately. So we're going to get the special summon the Grapha here, and then Chain Link 1 Star uses effect because a monster was special summoned to a zone it points to. It'll get boosted by 500 or 300 attack, and then it'll become 35, and then because of the field spell, it'll become 38. So it's pretty good. And then Silva will come back as well, and then it'll also get boosted for whatever reason. And then from here, if you play Dark World, I believe it's called, I don't remember what the name is, but it's the other continuous spell that you discard and then you draw 2 cards, which I don't play because I think it's just not necessary. You could just like go Dark World Accession, add it back to your hand, discard Snow, and then add it. But because we don't play that, we're not gonna be able to do that. But it's perfectly fine, as I don't think, yeah, we just have rainbows left, so it doesn't really matter all that much. But we're just gonna add it because we can, and we love having our value, right? But like I said, this game was basically over the moment the Gen came down, and you're going to find yourself in a lot of situations like that, which, whether you hate that or love it, I don't know, it's up to you, I guess. But now that we've cleared our opponent's board, we're going to go for the next logical step, which is to set up the Abao Aku line. So first, we're going to activate Star User's effect to special summon just because we can. So we're going to special summon Snow, and then we're going to overlay for number 60 Nugaris. Now this may seem pointless, and it absolutely is, but we're just doing it to flex at this point, honestly. But if you don't want to do that, you can also just like link these 2 off and then just go for the IP Masquerena, and this is still like really solid as well. And honestly, this is probably potentially better just because it guarantees that you're going to have the IP. As what we're going to do now is we're going to link these. And you can also just take it a step further, right? Like, you don't have to use the Silva. You can also just put it back in your hand, as we can just summon out Rainbow once again into Grapha. Although I believe the Rainbow is already in my hand, so we're just going to do the Grapha instead, which does actually matter somewhat, right? Just because you want to have as much value as possible. So we're going to do that, and then we're going to link these. Sorry about the zone placements. Getting a little bit messy because we're quite literally going through the entire deck. And we could go to like the Nightmare Griffin first, but it's just so unnecessary if I'm being honest with you. So we're going to go into the Abao Aku, and then from here, so we can use the Abao's effect to like bring back a monster, and that's probably what we're going to do, right? We're going to discard our Gen. We don't want to discard any of the Dark World cards just because they don't trigger off of this. And then the Abao will be able to bring back the IP Masquerena that we summoned earlier in the turn at the cost of banishing itself. And from here, we can just set our last 2 cards, being the Call by the Grave and the Dark World Accession. And like I said, the game was literally over. We're just flexing on our opponent at this time. And if they want to waste our time by making us full combo, by all means, we'll take that every single time. Because this deck does have a time win condition in the form of Coach King Giant Trainer, which a lot of people just do not realize. So they'll think that you're just burning the clock because they refuse to scoop, and like, okay, sure, we'll just punish you for games 2 and 3. So yeah, with that, the Abao will come back, and then the board, it's quite literally just unbreakable, right? So you have another free pop / reborn. This will always go into SP Little Knight. Grapha will basically be a pseudo negate. You have a Call by the Grave for if you need it, I guess. This list does not play a second Grapha fusion, but sometimes you just want to set a bluff because your opponent, you know, you want to demoralize them, right? And then the Gates of the Dark World, which will survive until the next turn and just like give us more fodder. And then from there, the game, yeah, like I said, it's over. I don't know how many times I gotta repeat myself. The first Gen and Ken into the Ceruli play, yeah, it's just unmatched. This deck is beyond obnoxious when it's able to pop off, which is going to be a little bit more difficult because of all the hand chips in the current format, right? Especially games 2 and 3, you are going to get hit by Shifter, you are going to get hit by Lancia, you are going to get hit by Droll and Lockbird, you are going to get hit by Bestials, but that's just the price to pay when you play something this degenerate. And that's something that we're just gladly going to pay every single time, right? If we weren't, then we wouldn't be trying to play Dark World in the first place. And with that, that's the video. I hope you guys enjoyed it. If you did, please feel free to like, comment, subscribe, and I'll catch you guys next time. See ya!